Hey everyone, welcome back to Chip Stock Investor. We need to talk about a really important topic, the global chip shortage. So for the last 2 years, probably saw that all over the news. There's a chip shortage. Maybe you had a difficult time making an electronic device purchase because of this so-called chip shortage. Maybe you've gone to a car dealership lately and what you wanted wasn't there, or you ordered the car and it was going to take many, many months to get it. All sorts of stuff has been affected by this chip shortage. But what is it? What caused it in the first place? What is going on? This is an important topic. In this video, we're going to talk about what caused the chip shortage. It'll help explain why the semiconductor industry is known to be such a cyclical up and down type of investment, and some ways that we can capitalize on that. And stay tuned till the end of the video. I'll be discussing the chip stock investor portfolio and how you all can follow along with that going forward. So first up, what caused the chip shortage in the first place? In short, it's complicated. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. I mean that literally. Manufacturing chips is incredibly complicated. Making a chip is just a mind-bogglingly complex process that involves many dozens of steps. It takes a truly global supply chain that's complicated and also at the same time very fragile. Just the smallest hiccup can throw the whole thing off and create what starts out as a small ripple, but eventually turns into an absolute tidal wave of destruction. It's exactly what happened with the chip shortage. Things really actually got started with the US-China trade war in 2018 and 2019, and then the start of the pandemic in 2020 threw a big wrench in the gears, and then following that, the huge surge in demand for especially consumer electronics in 2021 just caught the whole industry completely off guard. I'm going to get some help in explaining this topic from NXP Semiconductors, ticker symbol NXPI. NXP is a Dutch company, top supplier to the auto market. They have some really great slides that they provided last year that help explain how chips are made and how that contributed to the chip shortage. Taking a look at this first slide here, they break down the manufacturing of a chip into 6 steps. Step 1, they take sand from a supplier. Sand is basically melted down into silicone, which is made into these ingots that go on to make wafers. Wafers are the big round discs that you'll see in a chip fab being held by someone in a big white clean lab suit. Those big round wafers are what circuitry is printed onto, and eventually those are chopped up into chips, packaged up into a larger computing chip system, and then delivered to the end customer. Breaking it down further, we have another slide here from NXP that shows the different manufacturing phases and how long it takes. So the first is the fab. That's where the actual wafers of silicone are made. You can see that can take from anywhere 8 to 28 weeks for that process to be completed. That's known as a cycle time, which is basically the time it takes to actually manufacture a chip. And then that moves on to the wafer testing, assembly, and then final testing. That cycle time, or the time for the chip to be completely finished and manufactured in that step, anywhere from 4 to 10 weeks. In total, this cycle time, the time to actually manufacture the chip, anywhere from 12 to 35 weeks. So we're looking at from a few months to more than half a year just to manufacture the chip itself. Now, it's important to keep in mind here that a cycle time, the time to actually manufacture a chip, is different from the lead time. So oftentimes you'll hear semiconductor companies talk about their lead times have been extended during the chip shortage. So the lead time actually measures the period from which a customer orders the chip to the time that they actually get that chip delivered to them. So these lead times are highly variable based on supply and demand. If there's lots of chip supply, well, the lead time can be pretty short. It can be pretty close to the actual cycle time. If demand exceeds supply, basically there's no chips in inventory. These lead times can get extended because the fab has to take the order. Maybe it has other orders in queue that it needs to finish first. And so the lead time will extend much farther out than the actual cycle time. And this is what we've seen happen in 2021, especially during this chip shortage. The lead time has extended. And so while the cycle time may take as little as like 3 to 6 months, the lead time to get a chip from the time it's ordered to the time it's actually delivered to the customer is 6, sometimes 12, or even more months for some companies. This chart basically shows the breakdown between OEMs, an original equipment manufacturer, the actual semiconductor company like NXP, and then the actual foundry or the fab, the facility that takes care of the actual manufacturing of the chip. Supply chains were already kind of reeling from the US-China trade war and dealing with the different tariffs and restrictions on chip exports to China. But then the pandemic came and things got even more complicated. Many companies shut down, and manufacturers like automakers canceled orders, and they began to just say, you know what, we have chips in stock. We're going to work with what we have right now because we don't know what kind of demand we're going to have for our vehicles. They can do this because their orders tend to be non-binding. They can cancel if they need to. In the manufacturing industry, this is often called just-in-time inventory. However, there's a problem with this methodology. When the economy started to reopen, suddenly everyone was short on inventory. And so they all placed orders again with semiconductor companies. And in turn, those semiconductor companies had to turn to their fabs, to their foundries. The problem is the semiconductor company, like NXP in this case, has a much longer lead time and actual binding agreements with their fabs. So when everybody flipped the switch on again and said, hey, we need more chips, lead time soared as those orders piled up. Fabs just couldn't keep up with the demand. But there's more. Let's throw yet another wrench into the gear. Pandemic lockdowns. So as COVID-19 continued to roll through the world, many factories closed again. So this yet again extended the normal cycle time too, since closing and then reopening a fab requires significant scrubbing to make sure it's completely clean and ready to go before chip production could get turned back on. And if that's not complex enough, here's one more curveball. Supply chains themselves, ports and other transportation systems also got closed. When they reopened, they had to deal with this unprecedented flood of shipments. So shipping time also ground to a halt. So again, chips are complex. They're manufactured in a variety of different facilities, and these different fabs oftentimes handle different phases of the manufacturing process. Here's a map NXP shows of all the different facilities around the world that handle the different steps in making its chips. You can see where the problem is here. These facilities are often located in different countries, even completely different continents. So different chip parts have to be moved from one place to another. And if supply chains are constricted, ports are not flowing smoothly, again, the lead times get extended. How does this issue get fixed though? NXP uses this chart to show how just simply flipping on more capacity to crank out more chips and different components isn't so simple. Adding on to, or especially building a brand new facility takes a long time. So typically 18 to 24 months for an addition, or if a completely new fab, in this case, they cite the new Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, facility down in Chandler, Arizona, that's currently under construction. The estimate is it's going to take 5 years to be built and then ramped up to production. and cost $35 billion along the way to do so. This is why recent legislation like the US CHIPS Act here in the US, which earmarks about $52 billion to help support chip manufacturing here in the United States, has stepped in to try to help ease the burden on chip makers and their customers. Similar actions are underway in Europe and Asia, and governments and companies all over the world recognize the complexity in making chips and how fragile the supply chain is. So this has become a matter of great importance. A lot of money is going to get spent here to help domesticate or localize a lot of chip production. And remember, this isn't just important because of the chip shortage that just happened, but because the chip industry expects annual sales to reach $1 trillion by the end of this decade. So for 2022, the expectation is about 600 billion in chip sales globally, up to 1 trillion within the next 7 to 8 years. That's an 80% increase. That means lots of more chips are needed, more complexity, a lot more fragility that could be introduced to the system. Localizing chip making can help protect against future shocks. This is the reason why I started this channel in the first place. I believe chip manufacturing is going to lead the charge in a massive asset-heavy investment cycle this coming decade. Companies that supply the equipment to manufacture chips, their stocks are down big right now. Some of my favorites here are ASML Holding, ticker symbol ASML, Applied Materials, ticker symbol AMAT. There are also lots of interesting smaller plays out there as well. So a very small position that I have is a company called Air Test Systems, ticker symbol AEHR, which tests silicon carbide wafers that are used in electric vehicles. Also another company called Universal Display, ticker symbol OLED. A lot of these companies will have a lot to gain as chip fabs need to expand or new fabs need to be built next to existing ones, and in some cases, brand new facilities and new geographies to help strengthen the global supply chain of chips. There are also the chip makers themselves, which I like slightly less because they tend to get hit the hardest by those lead time changes that we talked about. They often tend to get burned the most with inventory risk. I do own Micron, ticker symbol MU, the memory chip giant. I also own a smaller company called Skyworks Solutions, ticker symbol SWKS. They specialize in mobile connectivity chips. Other stocks that have been hit hard this year are Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, TSM, ON Semiconductor, ticker ON, ST Microelectronics, based in Europe, ticker symbol STM. And then the third category, there's also chip designers, which tend to be some of the hottest names in this sector, especially in recent years. A lot of popular names like NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, Marvell Technology Group, ticker symbol MRVL, Broadcom, ticker symbol AVGO, and even some of the tech giants like Apple and Amazon and Alphabet are getting into this game as well. That's a story for a different video as to how they're able to pull that off and the companies that are helping them to do it. The point here is chip designers are great stocks to get in on this as well. They don't necessarily have to be burdened with inventory risk, although they are still tied to manufacturing, but these are asset-light businesses that are realizing some of the biggest growth as the chip industry expands. If you want to follow along with the chip stock investor portfolio, take a look. I have a link below in the video description here to a company called Stock Card. Check it out. Included on there are custom-built portfolios, including the chip stock investor portfolio. I've put this together. Starting from this point, let's see how these chip stocks perform. I'll make minor adjustments to this portfolio over time as well. Make sure you visit StockCard. Again, the link is below in the video description, and you can follow along and we can see how all of this pans out. I hope you've found this video helpful. If you have, remember to subscribe below, hit the bell for updates so that you never miss a video. We'll be back again soon. Earnings season is upon us. Lots of more updates are coming up on businesses as they report their third quarter 2022 earnings reports. Stay tuned for more. Thanks all. See you again soon.